Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Better Life Sports Live with my good friend Justin. How are you, Justin?
I'm good, Your Honor. Thank you for having me on.
Well, you're gonna start calling me that now, huh? I I'm not quite sure if we're broadcasting or not broadcasting. It looks like we are.
It's running on
Um,
my end. There's a counter.
yep, it's
Clock
running on my end too, but I
clock's
don't
ticking.
really I don't really see it on the website. I could bring it up just as a test. Let's do a new window just for aggravation's sake. Um. Maybe there's a little bit of a delay. I don't know. Welcome to our live. Whoa, there you go. It's there. So we're broadcasting live.
Beautiful.
Nice to know. And we're in the beginning of what we're going to say is a sports show. Right now, we're going to try to do this at least once a month, at least for the beginning. We're going to try to do twice a month, first, third, second, would we say? First and third
First and third
Tuesdays
Tuesday of the month
at 6 o'clock.
in between meetings.
Uh, what?
In between meetings.
In between meetings. That's the thing. Justin and I both belong to some of the same social clubs, so that's part of it. So, and we're gonna record this and put it out on the air, so it'll be available in a recorded version, even though we didn't really publicize it, so it's hard unless you're a subscriber to A Better Life New York podcast. This is a supplemental group of Better Life New York called Sports Live. So the first thing maybe we could get into, and certainly it's one of Justin's sore subjects, and that is our favorite football teams. It seems to be the topic of conversation, even though tonight is the All-Star game for Major League Baseball. All day, everyone's talking about football. But I guess that's what makes the money, right?
Yeah, it's certainly all about money. Today's big news was Jets related. They don't usually have big news, but it is the off season. That's usually their best season. Um, they signed two players this week, both former rookies of the year. They signed their big time wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, to a 4-year extension. And today they signed Sauce Gardner to a 4-year extension, making him the highest paid corner in football, which for the Jets, I don't know. That's a little laughable to me, but I do have to give them credit because they normally don't go outside that box. And this is a new regime. And you would think maybe the new regime would want to get away from the players that the previous general manager had taken on, but it seems as though they are ahead of the curve now because in the long run, they've added 4 years to both contracts. So both players are still playing under a rookie contract. And if they finish out the extension, it'll actually save the Jets money in the end, which is not usually what the Jets do. Usually they're buying players to complete pieces. They don't hold on to their talent, which is something I think that drives the fan base incredibly nuts. To watch guys play well and then leave and go somewhere else and even win championships. Certainly, Revis comes to mind. Um, but Sauce Gardner, will start there, I guess. He's not the talent that Revis was. Completely different makeup as a corner. Revis was uh, under 6 feet, um, an all-time cover corner. Could lock up anybody. Could play tight. Could play man. Could play off. Can play zone. But Sauce Gardner, typically plays about 7 or 8 yards off the football. Very rarely do you see him lock anybody up in man coverage. Um, he gets beat a lot, but he has great recovery. So, you usually don't see that in terms of teams paying cornerbacks for that kind of talent. Again, not knocking Sauce, but it's interesting because I think the Jets are telling you a couple things here. they're willing to keep their talent now, and this is going to kind of lay a format for the new coaching staff. Aaron Glenn is going to build his defense um, to his specs with these players, and he was willing to keep Sauce, which I think is a big tell in terms of what kind of defense they're going to run. If they're going to run single high, cover two, or usually I think this is his format is single high. So he's going to have limited safety help over the top, but Sauce plays off. So he's usually good at covering the first move. But a double move, he's susceptible to getting beat. He's very handsy, which is something that they criticize him about. He gets away with a ton of penalties, and I don't know if that's because of his name recognition. It's certainly something the Jets love to sell. Woody bought the big Sauce necklace, all the bling. He's definitely got swagger. He talks the talk, but I wouldn't put him in the elite level of cornerbacks, that we've seen previously in the NFL, like Revis, Charles Woodson, Champ Bailey, Deion Sanders, different type of athlete altogether.
So how does that round out the whole defense for the Jets?
I think what they're telling you is that they still don't have a pass rush. They're going to manufacture a pass rush um, because they're going to have to play soft coverage. Um, and they did lock up the other corner, whose name escapes me right now. Sorry. Um, so I think that this is them telling you that they have pieces in place that they can work with. And, they're probably still going to run the base 4-3 defense. They still have to replace their middle linebacker because he retired. Um, I think more importantly, you know, this defense is probably going to not be as aggressive as the Lions were. I think they'll build up to that. Um, Aaron Glenn coming over from the Lions because they've built on paper at least a solid offensive line, which you know they haven't proven yet that they can protect the quarterback, but they should be able to run the football with those two monsters they have in the backfield.
Right. So y- who's starting? Do you know yet, or is it still up there in the year? I know they have Justin Fields that they picked up from um,
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, and um, which was, I guess, a little shock to everybody, right? That
Yeah, I think everybody thought that they were going to go more of the Kirk Cousins route. Um, but I think that they're kind of trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Um,
right,
you know, to for Garrett Wilson, um, he's been on the team with 8 different quarterbacks. He's limited. It's not like he's caught a bunch of touchdowns, but that's more an indictment on the Jets offense in total and their quarterback play. He does have 1,000 yards receiving his first 3 years in the league each year. So that bodes well for them going forward. And I think they're just trying to reconnect Justin Fields with Garrett Wilson and hope that they can rekindle some of their magic from Ohio State.
right. I know that I was pretty shocked, and you want to take a step back for a minute, that they fired their coach. And the only explanation last year I could come with is that Woody, in his divine madness, basically was former ambassador to England, and he sat with those billionaire friends in the box. And when they got embarrassed, which there was a little bit of embarrassment how they lost that game in
Sure.
England, was upset, and he just hauled off and fired the guy. Um,
Yeah, I think that does play in to a degree. Um, you know, certainly, even though he's 40 years old, you go out and get Aaron Rodgers and you have all these expectations of getting to the playoffs and making and winning a Super Bowl. I don't know that that was ever reality, even if he doesn't get hurt. The way that the team was run, um, you know, it's interesting because Woody getting the ambassador position, you would think would have maybe have been a blessing in disguise for the Jets that he wouldn't be as involved meddling with, the coaching staff and everyday decisions and operations would be a good thing. But I think also maybe they missed the boat. Maybe they just wanted to keep things steady while he was busy doing whatever he does as an ambassador. Because you could have made the case that Sailor should have been fired prior to that, and I think that
Well, I think that's true, but I at the point they were at, I didn't really see it. And not I'm really an expert on, and we all know he's not an expert. He's just has a
no,
lot of money.
yeah, and when Sean Payton became available uh, and ended up going to the Broncos, I thought that was a mistake by the Jets, and that's because he's a proven winner. You know, he was on Parcells' coaching staff at one point.
Sure.
He's a football genius. He's got the respect of his players and his coaches. He knows how to win games, and you know, Sailor at that moment, look, you want to give the guy a chance, but when a coach of that caliber becomes available, those are the decisions that ownership has to be ready to make. Is this guy our coach of the future? Are we giving him one more chance? Or are we taking a chance on a proven commodity and pulling the trigger now? And the Jets, they fell short of that. I do like the Aaron Glenn hire for the Jets. I think he's going to love being here. I don't think he's afraid of the media. I think he'll take all comers. I think he's going to discipline that locker room and hold them accountable, much like, Dan Campbell does in Detroit. Um, I think that's something the Jet culture needs. Certainly, the culture in the building has to change. In the long run, does Aaron Glenn accomplish that? I don't know. I don't know if he has the gravitas that someone from the Parcells tree necessarily has. Although you could say, I guess did Aaron Glenn play for Parcells in when he was with the Jets? He must have.
I think he must have.
Yeah. Um. So I believe Aaron Glenn is a disciplined guy and is going to hold players accountable. So you know, I think that's something that you just won't see somebody at the microphone every week dodging questions and saying things like woulda, coulda, shoulda. He'll hold
Right.
people accountable and put their feet to the fire.
Right. Um, I think there's something to that. I think I don't know if you could see the Aaron Glenn stats here. So he played with the Jets from 94 to 2001. So
Yeah, so he was there with Parcells in '98.
right.
Yeah,
So I don't know how well you could see that, but that so that's part of part of it. I think the hiring of Aaron Glenn clearly is the thing you'd have to do if you're not going to give the fans what they want. You're going to give them somebody they like,
yeah.
and they like Aaron Glenn. I like Aaron Glenn, and he's a real player.
Oh
No
yeah,
joke.
he was a hell of a
So
player.
he was a hell of a player. I mean, he always had competition being compared to others like Revis, but I thought he was a stand up guy, and he had heart, something the Jets just haven't had.
No, they haven't. They really haven't. They you can't even say that they show glimpses of it anywhere because they have so many clowns on the field the last 5 or 10 years. It just the one guy has to lead the locker room, and if the one guy isn't a guy with integrity that holds people accountable, the locker room is lost no matter what. Very few times in the history of the NFL can you have, a group of guys that are all different personalities without at least having one guy lead the locker room.
Right. So, um, so I guess they're putting a lot of faith too in the two draft picks they had this year for the offensive line that they're looking to start with, correct?
Yeah, one is the big left tackle. I, I can't. I don't want to butcher his name.
I know I
Um,
read it too. I was hoping you
Boo.
knew it.
Yeah,
It's Ulu Fashanu.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of thought about him that he's going to be, what you're looking for. He's an offensive tackle. He's 6'6", 312.
Big boy.
He's a big boy.
I liked his comment. He was
And he
the one
came
I
out of
think
Penn State, which had a good year this year, and they were, a great running team as well as everything else. So, you know, um, I think that says a lot for this guy.
his comments when they asked him about giving up a sack. I think he was the one. He said, "Go look at the tape. I didn't let up a sack." And he talks the talk and he can walk the walk. They need somebody to galvanize that offensive line and anchor it. And if they can get that left tackle position solidified, not only to protect the quarterback, but also to, you know, establish the run game and keep other guys healthy. Once you have guys locked into a position and they don't have to rotate every week or fill in here and put another guy there. And, that next man up thing only goes so far when you've got injuries.
Right.
But you've got somebody to stabilize, especially your offensive line, you're, you know, you're able to do more because there's continuity there that you have play in, play out, week in, week out. It makes a difference in the long run for sure.
Right. And then the other side is the other new draft pick, Armand Mambu.
Mambu, yeah.
Yeah. So he's 6'4", 332.
That is
I mean,
load.
come on.
So that should his tape indicates that not only can he protect the quarterback, but that he mauls people. He gets underneath guys. He's got they call it footwork. He's got a good base. You don't see him off balance a lot. He's very good in the run. He gets up on guys pretty quickly. And another one who just accountability. He's an accountability guy, and they're gonna need that. Now you can put Elijah Vera Tucker somewhere on that offensive line where he can play one position and be good at it, and
Right.
his versatility doesn't have to put him in harm's way, so to speak. Because like once these guys start bouncing around from position to position, making up for somebody else who's injured, right now they have a clear cut, at least on paper. Who's starting at what position, and if they can stay healthy, again, those are all big ifs, especially with the Jets every year. If this, if that. But yeah, that offensive line is poised to, really solidify itself and make some improvements on their offense for sure. They've got the two guys they have in the backfield are complements to one another, very similar to having I would say Priest Holmes and Jamal Lewis when the Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2000. We didn't know yet that both those guys were going to be Hall of Famers. And I'm not saying these guys are. I'm just saying that
Of course not.
their talent level is indicative of those two. One is a, you know, speedster, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's shifty. He can break away. He's got speed. And then the kid from Wisconsin, uh, you know, he's deceptively fast for a big guy, and he'll probably vulture touchdowns in the goal line situations. But he's every bit as tough as a running back for a young guy that I've seen in the NFL in a while, and he's a bruiser in his own right. So I think they have a nice complement there. Um, they added somebody else who I think will be, like their third down back. But either of those guys can be the third down back, pending the situation, how they want to use them.
Right.
Um, so right now, again, it's on paper, it's the off season. The Jets are making some moves, and they look fairly decent.
And it's funny because some of the main complaint against Fields, and let's say Fields is going to start, right? He's the guy we think. I don't know what you think, but I mean he seems to be, top draft pick for Pittsburgh. They put all their eggs in his basket. But when uh, the complaint about him has always been that he doesn't haul off and throw the long ball, right? He
Yeah,
tends
he doesn't have that in his repertoire. He's not necessarily a gunslinger. Um, he's very much a system quarterback. You know, he's also had what 5 or 6 different offensive coordinators at this point in his career. For a young guy, that's a lot. You know,
That's correct. So
uh, I would
that's
probably
good.
liken it to somebody like Alex Smith in terms of the similarities between the start to their careers.
So, but at least it seems like there's some possibilities there. You picked up some defense. You know that the Jets fan base always loved a great pass rush, right? They always
Oh
had a
yeah,
great pass rush. Even going
that's
back
their
to
identity.
right, and even going back to the '69 team where they had big time players and really kept them in the game, and some of that won the Super Bowl for them, right?
Certainly,
So in '69, so um,
that and the gambling.
well, maybe a little gambling. I, I I don't know that much about gambling, so let's leave that aside. But I think there's some hope on that team. And then you look at the Giants.
Well, the Giants are, you know, a lot of promise. I thought they picked the right guy in the draft when they got Abdul Carter. I think he adds a tremendous aspect to their defense. I think he's going to open up things for other players, specifically. Uh, what's the other guy's name that they drafted high, number 5? Thibodeau, Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah,
I think that'll make him a little more flexible. Now he's going to see a little bit more one on one, and it's it's time to shine for them up front defensively. As far as their secondary is concerned, you know that probably leaves a little bit to be desired. But up front, if they can get to the quarterback, it's going to help keep them in games. They'll be competitive. Offensively, they're still kind of light
years
years
away.
away. Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
the offensive line really hasn't been helped
no,
significantly at
I don't think
all.
that it's lived up to its potential in the last 5 or 10 seasons. And that's been unusual because the Giants typically have good offensive lines. Um, that's kind of part of their identity.
Right, that and
But
the defense.
yeah, um, usually a team is well built all around, even though maybe their identity is one side of the football. But the Giants seem to have, you know, they've been making up for all the losses since you know Reese was out, Gettleman was in, and it just has never, it's never worked. It hasn't been something you want to look forward to every week and go watch and see them get better. They don't get better. They're just kind of out there playing football, and each week it's like, are they going to win this week? Are they not going to win this week? Maybe they'll be in the game. Maybe they'll score points. Maybe they won't score points. Can we have a passing touchdown? Oh, we got to. It's it's never. There's never a compliment or a stepping stone. Whereas you watch the Eagles get better every year for the last 5 years. They're tremendous. Washington now looks like world beaters, even though maybe they're still behind Philly in the division, but they can play with anybody in this league right now, and you can see them getting better, going forward. Whereas the Giants, it's like, can we at least stabilize the ship? Can we can we find our way through this trough of water and not get crashed by a huge wave? And it's I think Giant fans are kind of holding their breath. They want to see that defense, at least that front seven. I think they're excited about it, and they should be. But they're going to have to build uh, to make that work. And when you get a new quarterback, that's a 3-year project. It's not like they're built to win a Super Bowl and you can just go out and get a free agent quarterback to come in here and manage the offense. They're building a new offense from the ground up without a solidified unit in terms of their offensive line. We really don't know what Jackson Dart has in terms of ability outside of the college game. Uh, I hate to compare him to Zach Wilson, but he had some moments on film that look great. Other times, not so much. So, you know, how do you coach those bad things out of them? How do you coach good things into them? Do the Giants have a coaching staff that can do those things? Um, I do like Dable. I was very turned off to the general manager when I watched Hard Knocks, and he's sitting there with his feet up on the desk, and he calls Saquon Barkley, you know, basically to tell him to go scratch because you have a player of that caliber. You don't just call him and say, "Hey, this is our offer. You can go look somewhere else." That's a guy you got to go knock on his door and say, "Look, this is where we're at. We're at X amount of millions of dollars. We don't want to go to the next level, and this is why. But I came here to look you in the eye and tell you face to face." And that to me is how you handle a situation like that. And when Mara came into the guy's office and was like, "Well, I hope you don't lose him to Philly." He should have picked up the phone right then and said, "We're going to give you the 2 million. Please come back." I mean, they shot themselves in the foot in a big way with their fan base, with the franchise. I think they've taken some major steps back. And I'm not saying that Saquon staying would have won them a Super Bowl or even the division, but I think the way they handled that was poor. And I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel there, or forest through the trees, if you will. It seems like if those are the types of moves he's going to make, and that's going to be his attitude, it's going to sink Dable's ship eventually.
Well, you know, Saquon's a multi-generational talent. There's no question about that, right?
Sure,
He did, at least one thing that's become, his rear jump over the guy is something
you can
that's
only see
going
that in
to
video games.
for you're going to see that forever.
Yeah,
You're going to be seeing that 20 years from now.
the spinorama back
And he could have
hurdle.
sent the season record if they didn't sit him.
Yeah, which was his decision, which makes
Correct.
him it raises his level of a teammate and a player far beyond anything you could hope for when you're drafting these guys. You
And
don't know you're drafting that,
and
right?
to
Like
me that's the issue. If I'm a player, right? And we all know in football it's once go around. You're as good as your last play. No, barely any contracts are guaranteed unless you're a superstar,
yep.
somewhat guaranteed. When you're out, you're out. And like no other sport, you're really risking your body. And maybe more your body. Sometimes you're risking your life, and we've seen it on
Oh,
live
no
television,
question
right?
about it. No question about
So
it.
if you're going to take a guy like Saquon, who you really haven't given a fair shake to, you never gave him a line, you never protected his body, you
You
never
didn't
really
put him in a
offered him
position to
anything.
succeed for sure. He was
Right.
they kind
You
of left him. They
never,
kind of hung him out there to dry,
and that's a good way to put it. You
and
never gave him.
you could see it in the way he played because he was always felt like he was trying to do more than he could because he knew he had to. Whereas with the Eagles, he fits in their scheme. The holes are there. He doesn't really have to, you know, be Superman, even though he's more likely to be Superman now because he's protected and they open holes for him and they block downfield and they do all those little things. And then as a result, you see the spin and the backwards hurdle. I mean, you know, you weren't going to see that with the Giants.
Right. You listen, it's easy to say Philadelphia had the best offensive line and that helped make him great. Okay.
Certainly.
It's easy to say that they have a quarterback that could do the run and gun or whatever you want to call it, and that could run and split out and take some of the pressure off him. That's true. There's a lot of things you could say. And you can also say the Giants never did any of that for him.
Zero.
I mean, the Philadelphia offensive line is probably the best offensive line, at least since the Dallas offensive line of 5, 6, 7 years ago when they had a great line and still couldn't win.
That offensive line was tremendous. I think it took a little time for them to put together the rest of the complements on their offense. And then when they had it, Romo got hurt.
Right.
Um, you know, and they still went 13-3, and it was looking like, wow, are they really going to make the Super Bowl with it? Because they were certainly a Super Bowl contender in terms of talent on the field, even their coaching. You got to give them credit. Um, but in the end, it was Romo not being there. And I think that's even more apparent when you listen to him on the broadcast how smart he is. When
Right.
he breaks down these plays, he's giving away information that so much that they had to tell him to tone it down. But he sees the field like nobody else.
Right.
And if that's the way he was in the huddle and on the field, then, you know, Romo had some really unfortunate strings of bad luck, right? Like being the placeholder and still being in the game and you're the starting quarterback. You know, there's no backup for the placeholder, but he did drop the ball. But your starting quarterback should not be the placeholder on the kicking team. So, that could be a coaching thing. That could be just an unfortunate incident that I don't really think was his fault. And there's other things like guys dropping balls and, the fumble where the guy dropped the ball running into the end zone and he picked it up and is trying to score. And, you know, there was just some really unfortunate things that for whatever reason seemed to happen to him that I don't
Right.
really think were entirely his fault. And then when they finally had a window and everyone was healthy, he got hurt. It's unfortunate, but that's sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. You know,
No question. But
on his
I
defense.
think I think also um, Jerry Jones is a strange guy, and I know I'm not saying it, talking out of school or saying anything anybody ever know. All the money he has, and he spends, and he's known for spending. But at the end of the day, he gets cheap. I
Yeah, and I
mean,
think that's he does that to himself. And I think if you circle back and look what the Jets just did, you know, that they offered these contract extensions is forward thinking, something the Jets have never done. And when you look at Jerry Jones, he always waits it out and he'll wait until he prices himself out of the market. And instead of addressing the contract concerns when they arise, now a lot of it is media driven and he thumbs his nose at the media. So he kind of takes it, with a grain of salt, the talking heads, which he probably should do.
right.
But the forward thinking people in the room are just are not there. It's him. And I think he's kind of lost the handle on how it works. And he puts himself in these positions where he's trading away talent or not bringing talent back. He gets all excited about a draft pick, and the guy's in on the team 3 years later, and he's playing somewhere else. So, and it continues to happen. It's not like a one time thing. Um, you know, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, and all these big talents that they've had are all elsewhere.
Right.
So, and it's not just that position. There's other positions too, and
And they're going to lose their biggest defensive
yeah.
player.
Well,
He's
I'll tell
going to
you,
go.
where he goes would be interesting. You're talking about Mika Parsons, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because the Giants handed him over on a silver platter to the Cowboys. I mean, they ran to the podium to get Mika Parsons. I think the Giants are going to regret that for a long time. But we'll see where what happens. I think Jerry, like you said, he gets tight. He gets cheap. He kind of looks like, well, we haven't won anything with you, so I can get rid of you and find somebody else that can do a better job for less money. Where it's like, wait a minute, you've got you have a player here that can help you win, and it's not like you have a logjam of players where you have to make room for somebody. There's room here for the guy. Just pay him. You just have to be ahead of the curve. And the Cowboys have not been ahead of the curve at all. And when it comes to, you know, taking care of paying their own players, and they lose a lot of talent as a result.
You almost think it's Jerry's ego that he doesn't like anybody bigger than him.
Oh,
And
no
so
question.
he
Yeah.
doesn't let players get to that point where they can criticize Jerry almost. And
Oh, well,
no one would, but undermine him a little bit, maybe is a better word. And he always knocks the big guys down to size and boasts about the people that he overpays for that everybody's scratching their head about.
yeah, yeah. I think that was probably more apparent with Terrell Owens in terms of some player challenging him. And, obviously Terrell Owens wanted to win. I mean, he wasn't there just to collect a paycheck. Obviously, he was looking for the most money, but, you know, you bring that guy in, you know what you're getting, and you're getting a premier talent. And, the way it ended was like, wow, what happened there? And Terrell was still fairly successful after he left Dallas, but it was never more apparent, I think, that there was a problem in Dallas and Jerry is the problem, than
Right.
when that went down. And it's gotten worse since then.
I agree. And so, since we all of a sudden started to go around the league, and I know we're talking about football in the middle of baseball season, but it seems to be what's on everybody's minds at the moment. It's what America stops and watches, and baseball just seems to be something else entirely. It's gotten to be, and I blame the commissioner on that, but that's a whole nother story.
Of
But
course. Yeah.
um, the the other teams around the league now, so you have almost a disrespect of the quarterback from Philadelphia, Hurts. I mean, almost a total disrespect this week, where a poll came out where the New York, or I'm sorry, where executives and owners all rated him as, I don't know if it was number 9 or number 8 of of future quarterbacks that they would use for their team. I think one was obviously, you
Patrick
know,
Mahomes,
Mahomes, who is
Josh
everybody
Allen.
ever yeah, and then I mean Josh Allen, who played his heart out and didn't win.
Yep.
Um
I blame his coach.
it's easy to blame the coach on that. I
Yeah.
really
I don't
I'm
I
with
don't
you on
think
that.
I think he's like a level 2 type coach. They've had some really good talent and you know, uh, other assistants on the coaching staff the last 3, 4 years. And, they have some players that I don't particularly care for. I think it's Flowers is the one who's always,
Right.
pointing after a first down and spiking the ball and not holding on to the ball in big spots. But Josh Allen does play his heart out. And, you know, listening to coaches that I know, they're in agreement that it coaching is more responsible for their failures than their lack of play on the field.
Right.
You know,
Well, I mean, it's hard. eh, I mean, it seems like, well, if you're looking at quarterbacks, you have some big decisions to make. Are you making, here, does execs, coaches, and scouts rank, right? So, number one, and this has been is obviously Mahomes. Number two, Josh Allen. And, can you flip those two? I don't think so, because Josh Allen hasn't done what Mahomes is. Though he's a great talent and he's made things happen, everybody remembers the Mahomes miracle plays where he, wins the game in the last, whatever it was, 16, 23 seconds or whatever.
and the
But
Phantom holding and
yeah,
pass
all those things.
interference calls.
So the third quarterback they have is Joe Burrows, which,
I
which, and he's got a lot of talent, right? He took the team to the Super Bowl but didn't
Yeah,
win, right?
yeah.
Um, so that's interesting. And Lamar Jackson, I know he hasn't won the big game and he hasn't got his team to the Super Bowl, maybe like Burrows, and that's the difference between the two of them. But he's some talent. I mean,
Incredible talent, incredible
I mean,
athlete.
I would love to hear a team say, we wouldn't, no, we wouldn't take him if we had the opportunity to get him. I think every team in the NFL would grab him.
No question about it. I mean, just a year ago, we were talking about the Jets reaching out and trying to grab him because Baltimore wasn't going to pay him. And I mean, it'd be crazy not to. Um, like you said before, generational talent. I think if you could not, if you had to find something to knock him on, I think it would be his passing accuracy. Maybe his his decision making, reading defenses. But that level of talent, usually play itself out of a situation more times than that. But the deeper you go into the playoffs, the less likely you're going to be able to get away with that. And
Right.
I think that they've, created an environment there where they can, offensively, they could score points with anybody week in and week out. They just have yet to not only get over the hump in terms of closing out these games offensively, but defensively, they're not the same Ravens as they were in 2000 or even in, was it 2009? I think they won the Super Bowl when they had
Right.
Ed Reed. They were still known for their defense, whereas now they're not, you know, they're not that same Ravens defense with that defensive prowess. And a lot falls on the shoulders of Lamar Jackson. And, you know, when he gets figured out, it seems like he gets very frustrated and it's hard to uh for him to come out of that hole. But, it usually only takes one play, right? To change his attitude, to jumpstart the offense, to get them going. So the coaching staff, I'm sure, is aware of that. And if I can see that sitting on my couch on Sunday, I'm sure they see it. So, they have to continue to, I mean, their offense is tremendous. I mean, they can score at will when they want to. I think, they just have to be aware that they can't run the same thing every week. They're going to have find a different wrinkle here and a different wrinkle there, and you know, get everybody involved. And you know, I don't know. They're going to have to coach through his lack of accuracy, whether that means getting him in and throwing more passes in practice and throwing the ball through the moving tire. I don't know, but they get paid a lot more than I do to do that. I don't do that for a living anymore. So,
So what I find interesting is Jalen Hurts on this list. I just can't. So the reason you put Burrow ahead of Lamar is because he's made it to a Super Bowl.
yeah.
But how is Hurts
And
not in there?
if that's the case, then you could make the argument for Josh Allen to be number one, but he's not. And I think Hurts, I think he loses points with talking heads, people who make these lists, because he's
I
not,
mean, he's pretty
you know,
young, but he's been
yeah,
hurt. But he's pretty young.
he's a good player.
He's a
I
good
think
player.
they,
I mean,
I,
number 5 on the list is Jaden Daniels. You don't put
I,
Hurts before Daniels?
I wouldn't put Daniels ahead of him. I mean, not
So
how do you put him even in the top
Next is
10? He's a
Matt
rookie.
Stafford.
Well, I'm biased because I love Matthew Stafford. I know
So
he's
do
not the
I.
same quarterback that he was. If you had this list even 5 years ago, I would say no, he deserves to be in the top five. Now, if you wanted to tell me he didn't belong in the top 10, I would argue to the death because I love him so much. But yeah, I would put at this point, I would take Hurts. I mean, this is
He's
all
younger.
subjective. Oh yeah,
I mean, Stafford's 37.
yeah, he's not a young man anymore.
So after Stafford is Justin Herbert.
I just don't. Who made this list? Yeah.
NFL. It was a poll of, let me read it. NFL execs, coaches, and scouts.
Okay, so you probably waited here a little bit. They're probably taking into account the tush push. They're holding that against him. Um, so, but I would have no problem right now with the guys you already gave me, him being in the top five for sure.
So wait, so Matt Stafford, and listen, he's a great quarterback, no question.
Great,
Justin Herbert is number 7.
doesn't belong there.
I agree.
Doesn't
Talent.
belong there.
Jared Goff is number 8.
That's that's inexcusable. I'm sorry. I know Goff had a good season and he's playing with the right guy, but that's that's
Jalen
absurd.
Hurts. I mean, last year he had honorable mention on the list, but and he's been rated as high as 6th. But I don't. The guy won a Super Bowl. You know what? They're holding against him that he had an amazing team around him. They had an incredible offensive line.
I think
Well,
there's a lot of doubters out there for a
well,
variety of reasons.
well. Guess what? Every team that wins the Super Bowl has an amazing offensive line.
Right,
Has
right. You can't get there without it. I
And then
mean,
after him, now think of the drop off here. Hertz is number 9. Number 10 is Baker Mayfield.
ahead of Jalen Hurts.
No, behind.
I mean, is this like a fantasy league? Is
No,
this
this is
based on fantasy
ESPN's been
points?
talking about it all week.
This
So
is
wait, so
ridiculous.
here's honorable mention. Let's go through it. CJ Stroud,
I love that guy. I think he's good. He had a
great,
yeah, a rough year last year, but
and
he's been really good.
Jordan Love.
He's coming. I would put him ahead of Goff. I would put him ahead of who was the one before that. I don't. that's that's interesting. You can see, like I said before, about teams getting better. You can see when they're getting better, even if they're not winning, they start to do things better. Um, I think a classic example is somebody like Eli Manning, who took more criticism than he deserved the first 5 years of his career. And, that old adage about the 5 year plan. I remember, calling my buddy who's a huge Giants fan, um, and saying, "So what's the deal? They're going to get over the hump this year? Are they going to win a playoff game? Maybe a little Super Bowl action?" And he was, "Oh, I don't know. We'll see." And I mean, I certainly didn't expect the Giants to win the Super Bowl that year against an undefeated Patriots team with Randy Moss and company. But they, you could see the level of play had taken a step forward. You could see that Eli had progressed and was doing things that previously were in question. And if you can do those things as a quarterback in this league and progress, you should win games theoretically. Now, there are certain things that some of the guys on that list you just mentioned, they're not getting better. They might be in a better situation, but there's still things that they can't do. Um, and I don't. Baker Mayfield got better, but he was in a better situation. I wouldn't say he's better than Jalen Hurts by any stretch. Um, you know, can he play in this league? Sure. Did he have fantasy points last year through the roof? But what does that have to do with winning games on Sunday and being, you know, the guy you'd want as your franchise guy? I just don't understand that. And Jalen Hurts is a good guy off the field, so you want all of that stuff. That should factor when you're making a decision on who you want to play quarterback for your team. So I don't, not knocking the other guys, saying that they're not good guys, but I just don't see how he's so far down on that list.
Yeah.
You know,
So, are there any other teams you want to think that are making all the right moves or making great moves are going to be greatly increased? I know people say Pittsburgh. I'm not so sure. I
I
think
think
that
you watch out for teams that have good coaches and good quarterbacks, like the Rams. I think you watch out for a team like the Texans and CJ Stroud because it looked like they might be coming on. They've got Nico Collins in that offense. They've got a decent running back. Um, their defense seemed to get better a little bit. Um, you know, Miami's a wild card. You don't know what you're going to get. The coach is kind of an eclectic guy. Uh, so they have a tremendous amount of talent. Um, I think you know, the Redskins are definitely the Redskins conceivably could win the division this year. I'm not knocking the Eagles, but the Eagles did have some losses, and nobody has won that division 2 years in a row in a very long time.
right.
It's not to say the Eagles can't do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Redskins made a run at the division because the Giants and the Cowboys they're just awful. Um, the AFC West is always intriguing because you never know, even with the Chiefs, you never know what's going to happen. But um, can the Chargers, can they get over the hump? Can Justin Herbert earn his number 7 spot or 6 spot, whatever it is on that list? Do they have the talent to make that happen?
What about Denver?
Denver's well coached. They got much better last year. They showed a great
A-
improvement.
And everybody's talking about Knicks, their
Yep.
quarterback.
Yep. I mean, and he's in a
Um,
progressive state. What is this, his 4th season?
mhm.
So he's, you know,
25 years old, and
yeah. I mean, that's where you want to be in the 5 year plan. You wanted your quarterback to keep making progressions. Sophomore slump is one thing, but year 3, you have to see them turn the corner. Doesn't mean they have to go win an MVP. It just means that you have to find something that they do that makes you think he got better and you could hang your hat going forward. And then now, if this is his fourth or fifth season, if he eliminates, mistakes that he's made in the past and they coach that out of him and his talent level reaches the level of play in the NFL, there's no reason why they can't be competitive and look to win a playoff game or at least be in the playoffs.
Right. So, Atlanta, you never could figure out what they do and why they do it. I don't even know if it's worth discussion.
Ah, that division is
Um,
a yo-yo division. Every year somebody else wins the division. You never
and
know
you're right,
what's going to happen.
or they play great during the year, making all the way to the Super Bowl, and then are winning, and then decide to go home in the middle of the
In
game
the
and
middle of the
not
game. I
win.
mean, again, that's on the coach. I mean, you know,
Absolutely
run the football. What are you doing? Sometimes it's so glaringly obvious. They outcoach themselves. I think they forget sometimes there's just, who they are, where they are. Um, an ego takes over and they want to be the smartest guy in the room instead of being the safest guy or, you know, the decisions, that they make sometimes in these spots are egregious to me. Um, and they should be held accountable and fired and all that stuff. That's part of the process. Um, hard to get over those losses or get past them anyway.
hard.
And it sticks with the fan base. It sticks with the fan base. It's winning and losing is a fine line, right? You look at you know people talk about Yankee fans, how we're Yankee fans living in the past. They expect to win the World Series every year. Well, that's our standard. Why are we playing? Why are we going to the ballpark? Why do we buy all these jerseys? Because we win and we want to keep winning and we want to win championships. We're not here because it's a nice day. We're not here to see, I mean, case in point, Aaron Judge is having an all-time fantastic, great. His name is up there with Ruth, Gehrig. I mean, it's beyond Willie Mays. Name somebody in the upper echelon of the Hall of Fame players, because nowadays anybody gets in. But his name is up there with the greats of all time in terms of the season he's having, and you know it won't mean a damn thing to Yankee fans if they don't win the World Series.
So, and um, the teams we talked about last year. There's also everybody's talking about the Patriots, that the quarterback is here to stay and he's going to have the year of his life, which to me is the kiss of death.
Is that Jones? Back,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't see that happening. I don't know that he's matched progression with guys like Jordan Love or Jalen Hurts or even Jaden Daniels at this point, and he's only been around for a year, basically. Um, you know, I think I think there's a lot of question marks there. I think they're hoping that their coach can sustain winning and the culture, and we have to move past the Belichick years. But I listen. They want enough. They can suffer, as far as I'm concerned.
So wait, so here are the odds, right? This on DraftKings Sport, not DraftKings, FanDuel Sportsbook. So division winners, AFC East, Buffalo minus 280. Okay. New England plus five. I need new glasses. 550. Miami plus 750. Jets plus 1700.
I would say that the best bet there is Miami, just because of their coaching, and they have talent. Um, but you know, if Tua falls over the wrong way, season's over. So I think that's why
And
they're
that is it.
yeah.
So
And that factors. I mean, I know you sometimes you have to take the injury stuff out of it and just be a little bit more pragmatic about it. In terms of gambling odds, that's going to factor. I wouldn't have problem putting money on Miami. That's really the 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 safe bet in terms of the three long shots. Jets aren't. The Jets are. They're not there. They're just not there. They've got
right.
a lot to look forward to, but I don't. They're not winning the division.
So AFC South, Texans plus 110. I don't know how everybody can be a plus, but they are. Jacksonville Jaguars plus 300. We didn't talk about them at all, but I don't see any need. Indianapolis Colts, another team, plus 310. And Tennessee Titans plus 780.
That's the AFC South.
South, what did I say?
And the Titans are plus 780.
Yeah.
So the Texans are the favorite.
Texans are the favorite.
I like the Texans.
I do too.
The,
That's all in the quarterback, but they're
the,
still plus. That's probably the best bet there because it's still plus. Where you have AFC North is Ravens minus 145, Bengals plus 240, Steelers plus 500, and Browns plus 3,100.
just forget the Browns. They're not going anywhere. I think the Steelers are fool's gold.
Yeah. So AFC West. Kansas City plus 115.
Wow.
Chargers plus 310. Maybe that's a minus. It is a minus 115. Chargers plus 310. Denver plus 340. Raiders plus 1,200.
Yeah, forget about the Raiders. I think I would look for Denver to make a move there if you wanted to increase your odds in terms of getting a payout. And the Chiefs, I mean, I don't I know they're not the same and they lost a couple of pieces here, but they still have, they still have enough talent on the field where you have to go beat them.
Right.
I don't see the Chargers. I mean, I love Jim Harbaugh. So unless he can, what's this, year two? Is this his second year? Yeah, it's his second year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he can stabilize that franchise and, you know, work the kinks out of Justin Herbert, make him better, which he
Right.
seems to do with quarterbacks, you know, can they win the division? I think they probably have more talent, maybe than Denver. Um, that's going to be those two are going to fight it out to see who dethrones the Chiefs, if
So
anyone does.
right. So NFC. Ready? We'll end on just going through this stuff.
Sure.
NFC Eagles minus 135. Washington Commanders plus 210. That may be a good bet. I mean, it's always possible somebody gets hurt and everything shifts. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not taking the Giants or the Cowboys to win that division. And if I was trying to, hit lightning in a bottle, I would put money on the Redskins. I think that's probably, of all the divisions that we discussed so far, that team in particular is poised to surprise everyone this year, I think.
so Dallas is plus 550. And I don't have to tell you what the Giants are, plus 2,500. So the North, Lions, 185, plus 185, minus, plus, whatever. I need to make these bigger so I can see them. I thought I had a magnifying glass here. I don't. So Green Bay plus 280. Vikings plus 260. Green Bay. Vikings plus 270. And Bears plus 550.
Yeah, well, the Bears, I'm surprised they're even that high. Uh, Very interesting stuff, right? The Vikings, I thought for sure that they were going to make a move for Aaron Rodgers because I thought that they were, you know, that close last year, and it made sense. But they obviously went a different direction. I thought bringing Rodgers in would have been a good idea because JJ McCarthy's coming off that horrible injury, and I'm not a believer in throwing the quarterback right back out there, especially a young guy, missed his rookie season with the injury. He needs a mentor. Again, go back to the Giants when they had Kurt Warner. He was there to, steady the ship, right the ship, give Eli a chance to catch up with the playbook before turning the reins over, which was their intention all along. And I didn't have a problem with that. I thought Kurt Warner was good quarterback. He certainly proved that he's a Hall of Famer. Should have won the Super Bowl against the Steelers. Uh, but as far as the Vikings are concerned, you know, I'm a big Michigan fan, so I really do like JJ. So I'm biased, but he's a very tenacious player. You know, he's he's somebody that I think would benefit from having had a mentor and not just being thrown into the fire. He played for Harbaugh, who coached him very well. Um, so I would stay away from the Vikings this year in terms of betting on them to win the division. I just don't think it's a reality. I think JJ will play well, um, but we'll see. I don't, an injury like that, you never know what's going to happen to a guy. Um, so maybe they want to know sooner rather than later. That's why they didn't go after Aaron Rodgers, or maybe they just were trying to avoid the circus altogether with Aaron Rodgers. But I
True.
thought, I thought, regardless of the history with the Jets and everything else, and Brett Favre and whatever, I thought that would have been a good move for them to make in terms of JJ's progression. Um, so I, I, I wouldn't. The Packers played very well last year, and the Lions have lost a couple pieces, and they seem to be on the fringe of, are they still on the rise or are they on the downturn?
Right.
And I would put money on the Packers this year. I wouldn't. Somebody wanted to bet division winners and you chose the Packers. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all.
I think that's also a good bet. I mean, better
Yeah.
than some of the others. So moving to the South, Tampa Bay Bucks plus 110, Atlanta Falcons plus 220, Carolina Panthers plus 350, New England Saints, New Orleans Saints plus 1100.
Hmm. So this is the division that flip flops every year, right? Every year, or at
Right.
least that was the case a few years back. That you went from worst to first every year. Um, Not sure I see that happening this year. Um, I don't think I don't think any of these teams are great to begin with. I think they're just, no one in this division is winning 11 games. I think these are all nine, maybe at best a 10-win team comes out of that conference or that division to win the division. Um, I think it's more of a crapshoot than the odds indicate. Um, but I, you know, New Orleans is interesting, but I don't see them getting out of their own way. I think they're still living in the wake of quarterback controversy and losing the head coach. Um,
I think the best thing that they could win is possibly uh, a wild card spot. I don't think
yeah,
they're ever coming into that division,
no,
especially with Tampa Bay there.
yeah,
If they're healthy, their coach seems to at least get them to the playoffs.
yeah. They've
Um,
got a good staff there.
so so last but least, the West. Los Angeles Rams plus 175. San Francisco 49ers plus 165. Arizona Cardinals plus 420. They I I think they would sell that quarterback or give that quarterback away to anybody. They made some real bad moves there. And Seattle Seahawks plus 580.
Yeah, Seattle traded away some talent. I think they traded Metcalf to the Steelers, or he
Right.
did he leave as a free agent? Um, Seattle's interesting because, you know, what are you going to get from their quarterback? Um, they've got the coach. Um, you know, I don't think anybody's necessarily running away with that division, although, the last few years, the 49ers have really been like kind of the cream of the crop there. well coached, well managed team.
Yeah, I mean their
But
executive staff,
yeah, very good.
general manager, vice president of operations, just really top notch.
Yeah, but the Rams, pound for pound, might have the best coach in the league. And when they're healthy and they have all their pieces, they're virtually impossible to beat. Yeah, Matthew Stafford, like you said before, 37 years old, so he's not exactly in his prime anymore. But they have weapons. Um, they're not a team that's afraid to go get a piece if they need it. But I don't know. Can they sustain winning into the trade deadline long enough to make it happen? I don't know. I think
I
we'd have to
believe in
see what the
Stafford like
schedule
you
looks like.
do. I think
Yeah,
he's a class act. I think he's a great
absolutely.
quarterback. So
Yeah. Yeah, most likely the 49ers division to lose, I would say at this point. I'd like to see the schedule because you never know. Maybe the Rams have an easier schedule up front
maybe.
and they get a piece or something to put them over the top. Who knows?
Okay, we'll end it on this. Feet to the fire. What are the two teams in the Super Bowl?
Feet to the fire. Two Super Bowl teams. I don't think the Chiefs are done yet terrorizing us. I hate to say that. So I think the Chiefs and in the NFC, uh, I it's hard to get past the Eagles because of how well oiled they are. And if Jalen Hurts takes a look at this list and you light a fire under his ass, I mean, that's all you need to do is give a guy like that a chip on his shoulder and something to play for. They're going to come out to hurt you. So I think they will have their hands full with the Redskins in that division, but ultimately they're the class of the NFC right now, and they really didn't lose much. So I think it's unfortunately a repeat offense. I'll give the Ravens maybe a shout out there as an honorable mention from the AFC, but the Chiefs and the Eagles are still here to stay.
So I believe the exact same thing. I think the Chiefs and the Eagles.
I know I really went out on a limb.
I know. I believe. Well, the chances of a Super Bowl reoccurring are slim, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Giving injuries and all those things. I think I believe that it's the Chiefs. I don't know. We'll have to see what their offensive line is. We'll have to see if Kelsey came to play this year, or he's getting in a $5 billion wedding in Bora Bora. Um,
I think if you took the Chiefs and the Eagles off the board and you had to pick two other teams, in the NFC, you're probably looking at the Lions, uh, and maybe an young upstart team. We've seen second year quarterbacks go to the Super Bowl, so I don't have a problem with the Redskins being there. They played very well last year. They're going to get better, so I wouldn't have a problem with them being in that conversation. Um, and then whoever comes out of the NFC West is going to be formidable. But I think the Lions and the Redskins are two teams that you have to really watch out for. In
I
the in
I
the
I
AFC, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I agree with that. I agree with that right there. I think I think the Lions are the other team, and in the AFC, I think you can't forget Josh Allen's got to be looking for that.
Yeah, they're kind of. I mean, it's the Bills, right? they're always one short. I think I would look if I'm going to look past the Chiefs, it's the Ravens or the Bills. I think that's where the upstart uh, new contestant would be. I don't see it being the Texans, although I really like them. I think they're still a year away from really being a formidable contender in the conference. I think they need a couple of more pieces. Whether or not they add them, who knows? Um, and then, you know, uh, if if Denver can dethrone the Chiefs in the West, that's certainly somebody to keep an eye on because they have the pedigree in terms of coaching with Sean Payton.
So, well, that's where it is. Our first show in the can. I can't believe it. When you did pretty well, you went
Thanks. I'm
right
glad
through
we
it.
did
I
it.
didn't know. anything. So I do a good job of asking the questions that I don't know the answers to anyway. But I
I had
appreciate
a
it. We
great
went
time, Judge.
a little bit over. So everybody, so we're gonna have our live. We're gonna do a little better about getting it out. So we'll do. This is today's the third. We'll be on the first Tuesday, in August. And we'll have a lot more football to talk about because things will be starting to happen. And
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I said, oh yeah, yeah. I'm agreeing.
So things are going to start to happen, and we're going to be talking about more things. We're going to have baseball teams going down the stretch. I wanted to have a whole conversation about the All-Star games from all the sports, but we could save that for another day. We'll see what happens tonight.
Sure.
So we're going to be live, and then it's going to be recorded, and it's going to be available on YouTube. It's also a Better Life New York podcast. It'll all be recorded, and audio will be on all the major services that that regular podcast is on, and this is a supplement to that. So, Justin, thanks.
Thank you for having me, Your Honor.
We got a big cheer and a double cheer, and then
Thank you.
thanks for everything. And remember to leave. And remember to leave everything up. Let it finish uploading
Yes.
before it is. So before you
No
get out of
problem.
the software. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm not sure anybody was live because we didn't advertise it at all, and I don't know how they would have gotten notifications, but we had some technical difficulties and we switched a whole bunch of equipment around, but at the end of the day, it worked out pretty well, I thought. And
Yeah, I think so. I had a good
I,
time.
I thought you did an amazing job. I'll see you in a few minutes somewhere
Yeah, I'll
else.
see you in a few. I'm
All
on
right.
my way.
Thanks everyone for listening. Bye.
Thank you.